Malmo, Sweden. 3 times host of Eurovision.
Who wants to hear Eurovision song?
And Sweden's 3rd biggest city. In this video, I'll tell you what the city is like, how to get there, whether it's expensive or not, and what you can see when you're there.
Who's Malmo?
So why should you listen to me about Malmo? Am I Swedish? No. Can I speak Swedish? Not very well. But I have Swedish family and I go there at least a couple of times every year to Malmo. So I feel like I have a good understanding what it would be like for you as a visitor to go and visit Malmo. But I'll be honest about the city as well, as I have no skin in the game.
Hey, come on, let's go.
So first of all, where is Malmo? Well, it's right down the bottom of Sweden in the very south. It's in the county of Skane. Malmo itself is the 3rd biggest city in Sweden with a population of around 340,000 people. It's linked to Copenhagen by one of the wonders of the modern world, the Oresund crossing, which we'll get back to later in this video.
Dude, it looks amazing.
Time for a brief history of Malmo. It was founded in the 13th century by the Danes. Yes, you're not mishearing that. At that time, that part of the world was part of Denmark. Now, Malmo on the Baltic Sea grew in importance, and by the 15th century, it was one of the most important towns within Denmark. However, Denmark and Sweden soon began fighting in that part of Scandinavia. And by 1658, the Roskilde Treaty gave Malmo and the surrounding land to Sweden. In successive centuries, Malmo struggled economically, but through industrialisation it grew in importance again, becoming a major industrial area within Scandinavia and a transport hub. You can still see Malmo's dual history of Denmark and Sweden reflected today in the flag for Skane, the county which Malmo sits within.
To kill and be king? Is that all?
So what is Malmo known for in popular culture today? I'd highlight one person and one TV programme that you've probably seen that originate in part, at least in one case, in Malmo. The first of them, the famous person, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, one of the best known footballers of the last 20 years, was born in Malmo. He played for his hometown team, Malmo FF, before going on to play in the Netherlands, in France, Italy, Spain, and the United States.
Lions, they don't compare themselves with humans.
Until quite recently, he was lauded in the city. They put up a statue to him outside Malmo FF Stadium. However, he actually invested in one of Malmo's rival teams. It brought an angry response, a destruction of the statue, and maybe a little bit of a different relationship with his hometown city.
Wow, I didn't expect that at all.
The second thing in popular culture is a Swedish crime drama on television, The Bridge. It's been copied elsewhere in the world, but it started first in Malmo and Copenhagen and is actually based initially around the Oresund crossing and a murder and a body found on the crossing. And once again, we will return to the Oresund crossing, which is probably quite well known in its own right, a little bit later in this video.
And this was murder, you say?
How will you get to Malmo? Well, you could fly to Malmo Airport. It does have an airport. It's around 30 to 40 minutes drive or bus journey outside of the city. I think it's probably quite unlikely that's the way you come. More likely you'll fly into Copenhagen Airport, the biggest airport in Scandinavia. Around 30 million people in 2019 used the airport. 59 airlines fly out of Copenhagen to 175 destinations in 54 countries. So those stats tell you, most likely if you're going to go to Malmo, you're going to fly into Copenhagen to get there. The way to get from Copenhagen Airport to Malmo is via something opened in the year 2000. for the cost of $3 billion. The Oresund crossing, sometimes mistakenly called the Oresund Bridge, but it's a bit more than that. Coming out of Sweden, you're on a bridge. You reach a man-made island and then you go on a tunnel into Copenhagen. There are two ways to get across the crossing. You can use the motorway at the top of the bridge, or there is a railway running underneath it. You can get trains from Copenhagen Airport, Copenhagen Central Station itself, and a few other stations directly into Sweden. They run about every 20 minutes at peak times through the day. Oh, and one other thing to watch out for if you're flying into Copenhagen, make sure you're looking out of the window. You may be lucky enough to see a view of the bridge a bit like this.
Spectacular.
What about Eurovision? Where has that been held? Well, here at the Malmo Arena. It has a capacity of up to 15,000. It's a little less when the ice hockey team, the Malmo Redhawks, are in town. It's actually not in the centre of Malmo. It's in a suburb called Helia, and actually right next to it is a shopping mall and hotels. How do you get to it? Well, it's really quite easy. It is the first stop on the train when you come across from Copenhagen Airport. Once you reach Sweden, just get off at the first station and you're right there. You can't miss it. What else can you go to when you're in Malmo? Well, one of the most popular things to go to is the Disgusting Food Museum. It claims to have 80 of the world's most disgusting foods, from the stinkiest cheese to sweets made, wait for this, from metal cleansing chemicals. So have I been to it? No. It's just one of those places that I know if I went, I wouldn't feel too well going to. But it's very highly recommended on TripAdvisor, so you might want to go there yourself.
I don't feel very well.
Next on the list, the Turning Torso. Completed in 2005 until 2022, it was the tallest building in Scandinavia. There are observation areas right at the top, which will afford you fantastic views out across the Oresund Strait, across to Copenhagen, and of course back across Malmo itself. Then you have the centre of Malmo, based particularly around the big square and the little square. You'll have the town hall there, some water fountains. It's a pleasant area to walk around with shops and bars. A short walk from there is Malmo Castle, the oldest surviving Renaissance castle in Scandinavia. It was set up by the Danes and they used it at one stage to mint coins. When the Swedes took over by the 19th century, it was used for beheadings. Quite different today though. It's actually part of a museum and you can get inside and visit it.
I will go.
If you're looking for something that might not cost you too much to do, not far from the castle is the King's Park. It's a beautiful public area to walk around. Nice in itself, but very close to it are the castle gardens. It's a real hidden gem in Malmo. I can't recommend it highly enough in spring and summer to walk around. It's not huge, but it's absolutely beautiful. Malmo itself is full of lots of great places to eat, but one that I would recommend is the Sky Bar at Malmo Live. I'll put the location in the description below for this video. And what's great about it is, number one, the food is very good, but number two, when you're at the top, it's a little bit like the Turning Torso, but not quite as high. You get fantastic views across the city, across the Oresund Strait to Copenhagen. And when the sun's going down in the summer, it is a great view to take in as you have your meal. Now, if this video is proving helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you tickle the old like button. It helps me grow the channel and hopefully helps me to help other travellers plan their future adventures.
That's what the YouTube video said.
I've talked about where you can go in Malmo, but what about the surrounding area, the county of Skane? What sort of places could you go and visit on a trip? Well, the first one that I'd recommend is Skane. It's just over an hour's drive, maybe towards an hour and a half's drive from Malmo, and it is well worth your time. And do you know what the best thing is? It's free. Skane is a megalithic monument. It's in the outline of a ship. It's 67 meters long and made up of 59 boulders. Current research believes it was built around 1400 years ago. Then you have Skane itself. It is rolling countryside. It is beautiful, but you might recognise it when you're driving around and think it reminds me of a TV programme. Well, it's probably the crime drama Wallander. Of all the places, though, in Skane that I'd recommend as a town outside of Malmo to go and visit, my particular favourite is Oresund, right down on the south coast. You can drop in there on the way to Skane. Another city near Malmo that you could visit as well is the University city of Lund. It's about a 20 to 30 minute drive outside of Malmo. My final recommendation is not on the mainland of Sweden. It's a small island in the Oresund Strait between Denmark and Sweden. It's the island of Vane. You can get a boat to it from Landskrona, just up the coast from Malmo. And then when you get there, you can hire a bicycle and just have some time cycling around the island. If the weather's good, it's a great way to spend a day.
I want a bicycle.
You could also, though, use Malmo as a base to go back across the Oresund crossing to Copenhagen. It's a fantastic city to visit, many things to see. I'll just list now a couple of my particular favourites, but like I said, you really need to plan a visit to Copenhagen because there is a lot to see there as well. I would recommend doing two types of tours, a walking tour and then one on water. As for the walking tour, some of the places that you could take in would be the Tivoli Gardens, the Amalienborg Palace, the Rosenborg Castle and Nyhavn, probably the picture you see most often in tourist photos of Copenhagen. The thing about Nyhavn as well, though, is there are tourist boats going out from there around the waterways around the city, and it is a really great way to see Copenhagen on a lovely sunny day. You can also see the Little Mermaid when you're going around on the boat, and you'll probably be as underwhelmed as I am every time I see the Little Mermaid.
Is that all there is to it?
I'm sure to be back in Malmo and Copenhagen very soon, seeing family. And when I'm there, I'm always looking for places to go and visit. So if you can think of a few to recommend, stick them in the description below. And who knows, maybe a future video on this channel will have been inspired by you.
Oh, me? Nah, I'm just a worm.
Another thing you could do while in Malmo is go around the Oresund Strait. Start off in Malmo, go across the Oresund crossing to Copenhagen. At Copenhagen Central Railway Station, get a train up the coast to Helsingør. Now Helsingør, you may recognise the name Elsinore, which reminds you of William Shakespeare. And it's the castle there, Kronborg Castle, which in part inspired William Shakespeare to write Hamlet. There were famous parties there, and that was the inspiration that Shakespeare heard about to write his play. The castle, though, itself is well worth a couple of hours of your time going in and having a look around. It is fantastic.
To be or not to be, brother.
Then you go back to Helsingør port and you can get one of the many boats across the short distance to Sweden and to Helsingborg. Have a little look around that city before getting on a train all the way back to Malmo. So where should you stay when in Malmo? Now this is the bit where I'm going to be really honest and hold up my hand and say it would be wrong of me to suggest anywhere to you. Now this might get you really angry and say I need to know, but I'm going to be honest. I stay with family when I go to Sweden, so therefore don't need hotels. But there are plenty in the city and obviously Airbnbs as well that you can find.
Honest and nice?
Right, to drinking alcohol. It's a tiny bit different in Sweden. Pubs, restaurants, absolutely the same. However, if you're in a caravan, a tent or an Airbnb and you want some alcohol, you can't just go to a supermarket and buy it. It's not sold there. You need to go to a government alcohol shop. It's called a Systemsbolaget, and it's entirely normal when you're in there. It's just you can't buy the alcohol in a supermarket. What weather faces you if you visit Malmo? Well, if you go in the winter, it will be cold, dark and grey. It's not as dark as northern Sweden. I would say in the depths of winter, you still get about 6 or 7 hours of daylight. But on the other side of that, the summers are glorious. The best time to visit Sweden and to visit Malmo would be in the summer. The dusk extends very late into the evening, and obviously the sun rises very early in the morning. And look, if you're going to go to Malmo, I would say that is the best time to go. Is Malmo and Sweden an expensive place to visit? Look, it's not cheap, but I think people's perceptions of expense in Sweden are a little bit more than it actually is. But to be a little bit more scientific, a cost of living survey found that Sweden was cheaper than Norway, Finland, Iceland, and Denmark. In comparison to other European countries, it was said to be cheaper than France, Germany, and the United Kingdom. Comparing costs in Sweden to the United States, consumer prices are said to be 13% lower. Now look, I'm not saying Sweden is a really cheap place to go to. Once again, genuinely, there are lots of places that are cheaper. But I think you'll find if you go there, it's not quite as bad as you thought it might be.
Save money for your cake company.
Right, so should you visit Malmo? Well, I would say yes, but do it in one of two ways. First of all, you could use Malmo as a base to then have a look around the city and then around the broader countryside in Skane, and then use the Oresund crossing to go and have a look at Copenhagen and that part of Denmark. Or you could do that in reverse, stay in Copenhagen, and then once you've seen that area, come across the Oresund crossing on a day trip to have a look around Malmo. Both would work. If you're thinking about going to Malmo and or Copenhagen, I've more videos about what you can see in this area in a playlist on this channel. A link to that is on the screen now.